Welcome to The Difference. Today, we're having our second episode with Ashlee Lucas, who's going to talk today about a really scary subject of human trafficking that God has called her into in so many different facets of her career journey. So stay tuned. Welcome back. Ashlee, thanks for taking time to come back and talk to us about the work that you do and have done for the last decade nearly. We were just having a conversation before we started the podcast about the fact that nobody is comfortable with the words human trafficking.
Yeah.
And that we talked last week about your journey of how you came to the place that you knew that's where God had called you, and you were offered this job out of the blue without a resume to go onto the governor's task force for human trafficking, and you began to research it. As the people are listening and watching the podcast, kind of talk to us a little bit about that whole arena of human trafficking. I think it's so icky to so many that we just kind of don't want to know.
Yeah.
And so I think anytime we face evil or we face an incredible need, the devil tempts us to turn our head or turn our ears off. So take a little minute to kind of walk into what you've learned about human trafficking and the scope of it, right here under our nose.
Yeah. So, what a lot of people don't understand is, it's the exploitation of a person in exchange for something of value, like for sex trafficking, like a sexual act for something of value. And so trafficking can be as simple as a drug addicted mother in a community that is exchanging her child for drugs. A boyfriend that's moved into the house and he is taking the daughter off and exchanging her for money or drugs, and mom's overlooking it because she needs a place to stay. There's a housing insecurity. There's financial insecurity, and she doesn't want to get evicted. So it's people in desperate, times. We know that our foster children are more at risk because of the vulnerabilities that they have. A history of child sexual abuse, unfortunately. These children a lot of times go from being sexually abused and sexually exploited into trafficking, and it's like a funnel, a little pipeline. And unfortunately, so I think a lot of people think that it's just, transient, or it's from out of the country and coming here, or there's abduction involved. And, there doesn't have to be abduction anymore because all the predators are in our homes.
Right.
And parents are too busy being best friends with their kids to take their devices from them or protect those devices, or even have the technology know how to protect the devices. And so, because I always tell dads when I train, I was like, okay, a guy shows up at your door, knocks at the door, and he says, Steve, you mind if I go hang out with Matt in his bedroom by himself, right? Or your daughter by herself for a few hours, just close the door. Would you allow that?
Never.
Never. I mean, you are. But here we are, allowing them to take those devices in there. And I don't know if you've heard the story of Brian Montgomery, his son Walker. Brian grew up with my husband in the Delta, and they lived in Starkville, Mississippi. Family prays together, goes to church together, solid, hunts, fishes, live in the country. And he was talking about the size tires he was going to put on his truck that night because he'd just gotten his driver's license, just full of hope and just being a kid. And that night, went to his room and saw a little girl who he thought was a little girl from a neighboring county on Instagram, started talking to him. He started chatting back with her. She took him to a video site. Some sexual stuff happened, and immediately they start sextorting him. And it's like, give me money or I'm showing your mom. Give me money or I'm showing all your Instagram friends. Give me money or I'm doing this. And, he panicked. And because he'd hunted all his life, he had keys to the safe. And he ended up taking his life. And so here's a happy, healthy kid that goes to bed. His mom prays over him and his brother. And they wake up and he's not there anymore. And these men are from Nigeria.
Yeah.
So who in Starkville, Mississippi thinks that people in Nigeria have access to your children
Right.
through, we're thinking they're interacting with their peers. And they're not. They're not safe.
No. And it's literally an industry.
It is an industry. Yeah. Yeah. They have big, call centers and things overseas, which a lot of the people in the call centers are being exploited, and forced to do that. So, anyway, it's when you look at what Tim talks about a lot, Tim Tebow, the red dot map. On the red dot map, that is one peer-to-peer network. In a 6-month period, there are 340,000 unique IP addresses in the United States sharing and downloading child sexual abuse material from babies to 12 years old. Right?
Say that number again.
340,000 unique IP addresses in the United States.
That's IP addresses. That's not incidents.
Right. That's a unique IP address. And when you look at studies show that 55 to 80% of those are hands-on offenders that actually download and share in those peer-to-peer networks. And then you look at the average number of victims is 13. What's going on in the United States?
Wow.
Right under our noses. And we are not educating our churches. We're not educating our parents. We're not educating our children because it's too difficult a topic, Well, Tim, someone said that to Tim at a golf game one time, and they said, "Oh man, I can't hear that. It's too difficult." And he was like, "Maybe this wasn't the most full of grace message I could have given back," but I said, "How much hope do you think those children would have if they could hear you right now?"
Yeah. Wow.
Because the children, there are children in these videos.
And what really strikes me, as a Methodist clergy, we are every so many years required to go through sexual ethics training and abuse training. And so many times a clergy looks at that and like, oh, I just don't want to do it. But in those trainings, it talks about the whole process of grooming, the whole process of access, the whole process that many times the faith community is a gateway for folks who are predators who come in and volunteer to care for children or have activities with children, and that they build the trust not only with the kids but with the parents.
Absolutely.
And create this just free range place that they can abuse.
Yeah.
And if we're not diligent, and nobody wants to suspect that somebody, but in my experience, when you look at the folks besides the ones who are in the industry, those who are predators are, just like the scripture says, they are wolves in sheep clothing.
They are.
They don't look scudsy or, they're not the ones we see on the TV shows.
Yeah.
They are different.
Yeah. Yeah. I always talk about, like when the ice cream truck driver would drive by, and I would bodily attack my children in the front yard if they tried to go out there without me, because he looked like he lived in his mom's basement. He looked scary. But, when you look at attorneys and law enforcement and doctors and, all of the different cases that I've seen over professional, we can't figure that out, right? And so how do you protect children? They can't go on overnights. Sorry, not kid's best friend. My dad wasn't my best friend.
Right.
He was my dad. And my friends weren't friends with my dad. He was dad.
Our kids would just freak out when I would say, "What time are you going to be at so-and-so's house?" "I'm calling."
Yeah. Oh.
And he had a friend, Matt loves to tell this story. He had gone over to the house and I called. Yeah. And they said, "Well, she's gone to get snacks." I was like, "I'm coming to get you."
Yeah.
And I had barely gotten in the car, and the phone rings. It's like, Steve, I'm so sorry. Did go to get snacks. The
Yeah,
boys are
so
with me.
that's right. That's right. Well, Parks, so Parks he's a little bit older. I mean, a little bit younger than Matt, but I was talking to the mom where he was spending the night with a single mom, and they were friends, and I really knew her, and so there were a few people they could spend the night with, and I was thanking her for having Parks over. If she needed anything, this was my cell phone number and all of this. And he texted me and he was like, I can hear you talking to her. And I said, good, GOOD exclamation point. I will always check on you.
Right,
And he had another friend, and she said, Ashlee, kids will come over here for the entire weekend and their parents won't call.
right.
They don't have any idea if they're.
No.
No, I mean, and I told my kids, I said, yeah, I trust you, but I'm your accountability partner.
Right. And I think that for me, everything that I hear about human trafficking
Yeah.
is that the framework of accountability has so been deteriorated
Right.
because of access. Kids can see anything on TV, they can access anything on their phones, they can get on their computers and have gateways to anywhere.
That's right.
But are also doors for anybody to come into their life.
That's right.
And parenting nowadays is very sophisticated.
That's right.
It's a different thing, and it's the parent's job to be aware of dummy apps and the way the kids can hide,
Yeah.
their communication and the networks of friendship that they can have once they're mobile or involved in outside activities that you can't have direct supervision in. It's like a cornucopia of opportunity.
Yeah. And I think, too, you have to reframe your language as a parent because, we talk about like not talking to strangers and things like that. Well, they think the person they've been gaming with for 6 months is their friend. So that's their friend. So they don't understand, like when you say don't talk to strangers. And where do predators go? They go
Right.
where kids are. They enter volunteer roles at the church, the Boy Scouts, the, whatever. And the summer camp, unfortunately. And, you don't want to be suspicious of everybody, but it's just the world we live in.
Right.
And we don't address pornography in the church, and we have addiction in the church that is breaking up families and destroying families and fueling this industry.
Right.
And we're just gonna talk about the Bible,
Right.
and it's like, yeah, we do need to talk about the word, but we also need to instruct our flock and protect our flock, and they're our responsibility. And so we need to bring awareness to the church. We need to equip our people, and then we need to partner with organizations that are doing the good work. Not the shiny people that say that we're doing the good work, the people with outcomes, that we're seeing outcomes.
Right.
And so important.
Well, I think strategically the culture has created, first of all, the sexualization of both boys and girls now from very early ages.
Yeah.
I mean, Cindy right now is directing the preschool, and it's just incredible how young kids begin to kind of be aware of human sexuality, begin to be dressed in certain ways, and then at the same time, the access to entertainment, gaming, the violence, the sexuality is just there, built into games
Yeah.
where kids are already being conditioned or deconditioned from as early as they have awareness.
Right. And you have games, when you look at like a Roblox platform and you understand that it's millions of games. So even if they were putting their best foot forward,
Right.
you still have issues, right?
Exactly.
But children, are going into games that have sexual encounters in the bathroom with each other. These avatars do. And they're luring you in there, and they're doing all these things to children. And that's what your child's playing. And it's like, oh, well, I'm not giving my child a cell phone. He just plays games, but nobody has access to him. And he's on Roblox. I was like, Okay, the pedophile's playground.
Exactly.
I throw myself across their kitchen counter. I'm like, the pedophile's playground. It's like, come on, guys. And then on the way home, my husband said, "You see why we don't have any friends?" And I was like, "Yeah, we might not get invited back." Just super intense, though. Like, come
Well,
on.
it is so much pressure on parents. And with
Yes.
now both parents working in so many households, you're entrusting your child care to other people.
Right.
The stress level, the time for conversation or interaction. Parents are just as addicted to their phones as their
Yeah.
kids are. And so the real face-to-face time, when we talk about be ye not conformed to this world,
Yeah.
it really is a scriptural cry to say, don't be captured
Yeah.
with this apple.
That's right.
Literally.
Apple. Yeah, absolutely. And I was looking at a pastor's, he was talking about that, and he was talking about leaving the phone in the other room. Like, not even having it turned over with your kids, but like leaving it in the other room. Like, the dinner table is a no phone zone.
Sacred place.
Right. And having those times with your children where it's a no phone zone.
Right.
My kids had an uncle that, they would walk into his house and he'd have a basket, and everybody, on Thanksgiving Day or whatever,
There are literally now
Yeah.
restaurants that have created the culture that said, if you put your phone in this basket and have conversation around the table, we'll give you 10% discount.
Oh, wow. No, I haven't
like,
seen that.
Go, that's awesome.
awesome.
So let's get a little practical before
Yeah.
we move into your career track. Give me 2 or 3 things you would say to parents to help them as they parent their children in this season.
Yeah. So it really depends on, what age and what's age appropriate. There's the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, which is NCOSE, NCOSE. They have a website, and they have a parent help center where you can literally go on there and ask questions, and they'll answer you. Like, I experienced this, my child, this is what happened to my child. What can I do about it? Because a lot of times something's happened. And Brian will tell you, Brian Montgomery, the father of the child that died, he will tell you, I didn't know what to protect my children from. And so these conversations are so important. National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they have age appropriate for preschool. So it's just like safety, and then how to talk to parents if somebody tells you to keep a secret, things like that. Because we had a distant cousin that told me about her mom's boyfriend when I was 7 years old. I still remember the conversation, but she told me not to tell anybody. And I thought you just keep secrets.
Right. Well, I mean, that we say, be trustworthy.
Yeah.
And it puts you in that moral tension of, I'm scared about this, but we don't tell secrets.
Yeah. And nor did I even have the understanding of like what she was talking about.
Right.
Like, I mean, I'm 7,
Sure.
And so, but just saw the decline of her life over the years based on what had happened to her,
Right.
as a child. So it's just very important to get educated. There's an incredible resource for the church that we promote. It's called The Fight for Freedom. Lee Kohler is a great friend of mine out of Houston, Texas, that wrote it. It shows church members on how do you get involved, and like, what is your role? And it talks to parents and gives all kinds of tools for parents, for church members, and so find a resource, for an age-appropriate resource for your children. We've created a website called churchesagainsttrafficking.us, and so we're putting all of the material and stuff that we have vetted for the church on that website. Resources for the church, because we're not trying to hand off something to a pastor who's already overworked and doesn't have the time to initiate a new program or go figure it out. It's like, here it is in a package, and then convene a prayer meeting of people that are interested in this, find the champions in your church, and set them loose to do the trainings and stuff, or facilitate the trainings.
Right. I think that's what I would want faith communities to hear
Mm-hmm.
is no congregation is complete without this as a facet of their ministry.
That's right.
Because there are no immune places.
That's right.
And that if we seriously are shepherds of our sheep, we have to seriously think about our responsibility, because this is such a high risk arena. And so we'll share some of these resources with you. Ashlee's going to send them to them, and
I
we'll
will.
put them on Facebook and our YouTube channel and so forth, and do that.
Perfect.
Well, let's switch a little bit
Okay.
and now talk about your personal journey. You had told us in last episode that while you were listening and God had told you something was coming in January. Tell us what came once you accepted the job.
So it was at the Mississippi Office of Homeland Security, so the state office. It's under the Department of Public Safety. And I was administrator of the governor's task force on trafficking. And so that really built the foundation for me, because there were so many good people that had already been doing the work, or that were finding out about the work. And I met so many people. I made connections. I built relationships. We really started training and doing some things together. And from there, underneath the Office of Homeland Security is the Fusion Center. And so Fusion Centers were stood up in 2002, right after 9/11. And they were stood up by the Federal Office of Homeland Security after 9/11. And it was because a lot of people had pieces of the puzzle, but they weren't communicating. And so they co-located federal, state, and local officers and intelligence analysts at there's 78 fusion centers at the time when I left. And so I became a human trafficking intelligence analyst. I didn't know what a human trafficking intelligence analyst did. I didn't even know what an intelligence analyst was, nor what they were doing over there at that fusion center. But the new director that they put into place, she was former FBI, ASAC, and she just saw the potential in me and knew how much I loved human trafficking. So she just trained me. So she came over, recruited me from there, because we were done with the governor's report and kind of had finished that. And so I did that for 2 years. Funny story was our gang intelligence analyst was really good, and they recruited him to the Orlando Fusion Center. And I said, well, I'll just hang on to that for a minute and until we can find somebody, and I'll just help out with that. I mean, I knew the name of 2 gangs. Like, I was not the person for the position, right?
Well, and for folks who are listening, I mean, we think about gangs and we think about drug trafficking. Now, human trafficking
Absolutely.
has become an incredible
Absolutely.
source of
100%.
resources.
100%. And so the next week, the governor asked for a gang threat assessment for the state. And I was like, really? This is interesting. I know the name of 2 gangs. And so I just prayed, and said, Lord, who do I call? Like, what do I do? Who do I connect to? And then my mentor was incredible, because she'd worked with the FBI. And we just came up with an incredible intelligence report for the governor. And it was because we went out and we interviewed local law enforcement, and we surveyed them, and then we matched them against the Department of Corrections and what they had in their database. And it was that we had the top 3 gangs, and they were verified by all the officers in all of the locations, all the counties, and it was corroborated by the Department of Correction data. And we did a heat map and showed how had been gang members arrested, and all 3 of those had been arrested in 78 counties, and then at least 2 of them in the other counties. And so it's like there is an issue with gang-involved crime, right? And so it's something that needed to be addressed, and ended up presenting that in D.C. at the National Fusion Center training. And here I am, No, but the interesting thing about it was I had no bias.
Right.
So it actually worked out perfect,
And I
because
think
I didn't expect to find anything in particular,
whenever God calls, that's one of the cool things. You think about Moses, you think about anybody that he called into these places, either they had no bias, or like Saul, they had this dual language of Jew and Roman,
Right.
and those unique personal being things became the very tools that made him such a strong disciple and witness. So you're in this, you're in intelligence. Tell me, one of the things that when I was at the conference office just blew me away was how in the Delta, the gang population, the river flow, the barges, the trafficking happens. Mississippi is really an incredibly ripe field because it has all kinds of transportation, has all kinds of cross-country intersections that allow people to go north and south and east and west. So as you're doing your intelligence on this, what was something that just really kind of took you aback?
Well, what really impacted me most was how much that you can find just open source evidence, right? And that, I could create an intelligence packet for a law enforcement officer that doesn't have the time to do it, right? Because he might be looking at 50 or 60 cases. But I can go and do a deep dive in this human trafficking case and build out, 13 reports that corroborate this little girl's testimony, because she gave me the nickname and a street name and what you could find on social media and what you could find in an insurance database or all these different locations, how we were trained. It was really incredible because children that are sexually abused and sexually exploited, they couldn't give you a proper timeline, a structured timeline. So a lot of people think that they're lying because there's fractures in their story because it's impacted their brain.
Sure.
And so if you look at the brain research, there's a neurological component. And so they couldn't give you a correct timeline even if they wanted to. And so a lot of times people think that they're lying. Or they look at their behavior and they say, oh, well, they're acting out, so they're lying, because we've had trouble with this person. Well, they're acting out because of what happened to
The
them.
trauma.
So their behaviors, their communication, that something happened, instead of us addressing it as a medical and mental health need,
Symptom. Yeah.
right? We're punitive and we're putting them in juvenile justice and locking them up. And, and then we have mass incarceration in Mississippi because they just follow that trajectory right into the prison systems.
Well, and the other thing that I started doing some addiction chaplaincy and because of some friendships and things we're doing, really kind of backed into the foster care system, which you alluded to earlier, and realizing that now, like the Methodist Children's Home, the Baptist Village and stuff, are not like the old orphanages.
Right.
These are the kids that you're talking about.
That's right.
That have been abandoned, sexually abused, put in the youth justice system because there was no place else to put them.
That's right.
And then as they age out, then we have this huge void that almost creates this fodder for the whole thing to continue.
Well, and you think about when you don't address mental health too, and you just try to medicate everything. I mean, we just become drug dealers ourselves.
Right, exactly.
Like, okay, we're just going to manage your behavior and we're going to make you calm down by giving you this drug.
Right.
And there is a need for medicine.
Yeah.
I'm not against medicine, right? But when you look at some of the systems within our state that have failed our children, you see it.
Well, and it's almost like I had a friend who said we treat our children like pets.
Yeah.
And they become a commodity, not a responsibility. And I think the faith-based community, sometimes we get so captured in activity and entertainment and making sure people want to be here that we're not willing to walk into the arenas that give them tools to live life that are not comfortable arenas to be in.
Yeah.
And one of them is this whole thing about human sexuality. I mean, we've always, everywhere we've gone, done Fearfully and Wonderfully Made, where we talk with those sixth graders about their sexuality as a gift from God, but it was created for certain purposes and not for others. And that part of your stewarding your life is stewarding your body. but there's always, again, like the whole human trafficking thing, this squeamishness of,
Yeah.
we don't want to talk about it. Well, whether you want to talk about it or not, your kids are talking about it.
That's right.
Their friends are talking about
That's
it. The
right.
internet's talking about it. It's coming into their life. Do you want them to tell them, or do you want to tell it in a different way?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're at the state, and you're an intelligence officer now. Do you have an FBI badge or anything like that?
Not yet.
And so what's next?
So next, there was some legislation passed that funded a human trafficking coordinator. So before, there was a human trafficking coordinator that sat in the Attorney General's office. That was Paula Broom. It was kind of just a part-time thing. She was a deputy prosecutor as well. And but it had never been funded. And so there was never anybody in the position. And so they funded the position, and I got a phone call that I'd been hired for the position. And I was like,
another no application job.
I didn't apply for that position. And, and so there were some people that had really helped with the legislation, and they had, there were people that were lined up for the job, and it wasn't me over here. And so I knew there was going to be some spiritual warfare around that. And I didn't want it if it wasn't the Lord's position for me, and so that Sunday I'm in church, and the pastor's like, raise your hand if you have a prayer concern. He said it at the same time every Sunday, and I've got both hands in the air. And I'm like, Lord, before I go and speak with the commissioner tomorrow, I need to know, because I know what I'm about to walk into. There's going to be a lot of spiritual warfare around this position. If it's not yours, I don't want it. Yeah. I get back out to my car, and at the time that we raise our hand every Sunday, I had a text from a friend that I hadn't talked to in about a year and a half. And she said, the Lord prompted me to tell you that you've been found faithful and promotion time is upon you.
What a coinky dink.
Yeah. So, you just can't make that up, But I told the Lord that Monday if he changed his mind, because things were going really well at the Fusion Center. And buddy, it was an onslaught of spiritual warfare around that position. But it was incredible. We got to do some really good things for the state. Yeah. I thought, I'll just write this grant. Like, how hard can writing a grant be, right? Had no idea, or I would not have done it. I would. And we wrote this grant and ended up getting it by accident, just the Lord's providence, because I had no idea what I was doing. But we ended up getting that grant. It was for a law enforcement task force for human trafficking for law enforcement, and then the victim service side. So we partnered with the Office Against Interpersonal Violence, and I was sitting at the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation. So we stood up a human trafficking unit. Wow. And so 3 people, North, South, and Central Mississippi, and then they added a couple of more. MBI added some. And those were some great years. I worked with some great men who love the Lord. And so it was just a really good environment. It was a great job. But towards the end, after 5 years, I knew that the Lord was calling me to something else. And a few years ago, he told me that I was going to work with Tim Tebow, and I had just journaled it. And I thought, that's interesting because I don't know anybody that knows him. I'm in Mississippi. How is this going to work?
Exactly.
But I was connected to someone that worked for him through a National Child Protection Task Force that we worked with, which is an incredible organization. They find missing children with law enforcement, and they wrap services around those children. Like, what are you running from, or who are you running to? And let's make safe environments for these children so they don't run anymore. But anyway, so we had them come in and train, and that's how I got connected to someone that works on the Tim Tebow Foundation side. They recommended me, so I'm actually on the Tebow Group side, which is their investment, their for-profit, and and then we work with the foundation, and we work with technologies that fight child exploitation and trafficking, and we work with 13 different solution groups that are addressing trafficking. But in those solution groups are investors, there are nonprofits, there's for-profits, there's technologists, and so It's everybody coming together and sitting at the table and saying, let's work on this together. And it is absolutely incredible
Mm.
to see after 3 years what has happened. And so I told Tim last time that I saw him when we were there, I said, the needle's moving.
Well, several things you said just struck me. One is if anybody knows me, collaboration is my heart.
Yeah.
And what you find is, whenever we come together for a common purpose, Scripture reinforces this in every way. There's strength in that. There's
Yeah.
depth in that.
Yeah.
It does move the needle.
That's right.
And it seems like one of the issues we face when we talk about being different and so forth is our tendency in this culture is to silo out, to act in a scarcity model, to be afraid we're in competition rather than in collaboration. And it's like you said, in the politics of things,
Yeah.
we lose sight of what we're trying to do because of the other dynamics that are around.
That's right.
So
Well, you lose sight of the mission.
yeah, exactly.
Like the mission is to protect children. The
Right.
mission is to identify and detect and find the victims, to prevent it from happening. But if it does happen, to address it and respond, right?
Right.
And to create effective solutions. One of the things, like we have child welfare, right? And so as a church, we're like, recruit foster parents, good foster parents. That's important,
Yeah.
right? But one of the ladies that has Connect Our Kids, Dr. Jennifer Jacobs, she was a colonel over intelligence. And so she said, I find biological family members for those children just like I used to find terrorists. And I was like, wow. She came up with this organization called Connect Our Kids after she retired. And so, and she talked about how the church vilifies the biological parent. And I mean, it hit us. It hit me really hard because I thought long and hard about that. And we don't see the church really coming around biological families who didn't lose their child to abuse, right? Who lost because of maybe neglect or poverty, but it was all a solution that we could have helped them with, or we could have put them in a safe placement with a biological family member rather than having to throw them into a stranger's home.
And if churches want to find ways to get involved, one of the things I loved when I was pastor at Heritage in Hattiesburg was we had a family member who's had fostered a family that was falling apart due to addiction and everything we're talking about. And they just came and said, what can we do? So we started to partner with DHS and other things and saying, what do families need? How can we do this? We began to build the go bags when they go pull a child out of custody and go. We offered the cribs. We go, the faith-based community has so many ways they can come along and collaborate with the resources rather than this sense of we're almost in competition with all these state agencies and stuff. Oh, they're not Christian. They don't do the right. Now, all of them are trying to do.
Oh, no, I worked real closely with
they're
CPS.
Under-resourced, they're overworked, too many cases. So I do think if we want to be different, those of you that are in faith communities, think about ways you can explore this. So I want us to kind of wind down. I think we could have 6 sessions, but when I went to Tim Tebow's site, I was looking at the ways the foundation works and the organization works and his passions. And one of the things, besides human trafficking, that really struck me was the school in Zimbabwe or the clinic in Zimbabwe, which I love because we had done mission there. Tell me what it is that drives Tim to be a nexus point.
Okay. So the foundation is focused on 4 ministries. And so profound medical needs, orphan care and prevention, anti-trafficking child exploitation, and profound medical needs, special needs. Okay.
Yeah.
And so they told Tim when he started that you can't do that many. But, Tim's like, well, God told me to. Like, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do all 4 of those, right? And he's done them, and he's done them well, because what they did is they identified partners. All of these global ministries, Most of those were already on the ground doing the good work. So they found the people that were doing the good work, and they came alongside them with resources. And there's accountability. There's auditing, because we want to be a good steward of everything that God entrusts to us. And so, but if it's a hospital that's needed in an area, then we'll build the hospital, right? If it's if it is we had to build safe homes for children that have to testify. And so those look different than a Methodist Children's Home over there, right? I mean, they have razor wire around them, to actually protect those children if they have to prosecute. So anyway, his dad was a missionary in the Philippines. And that's how he grew up, as a missionary's child. And they moved to the States, I think, when he was 5 years old, but went back and forth a lot. And he said when he was about 15 years old, he met a boy with his feet on backwards. And I remember him telling me, I remember him talking about how when he saw them, some boys ran with him and went and put him back wherever, and he followed because he wanted to see what was going on. And so what he came to find out is that if you have special needs, if you were born a certain way, you were cursed. Mm-hmm. And so changing that narrative is like, no, you're a blessing. That's where the special needs all encountered. But then his dad was in another country and at an underground pastors conference, and someone came in to sell 3 little girls, or four little girls. And he said, I just purchased the freedom of 4 girls. He called him and told him. He was like, Dad, what did the other pastors do? He said, nothing. He took every bit of cash he had in his pocket to get home, to eat, and purchase the freedom of those little girls. And so, that is what imprinted on Tim's life. And God has just used him in miraculous
what a full
ways.
Circle conversation. We started our first interview talking about our families and how important it is to instill in them that sense of what's right and wrong. And here is this celebrity who most people don't know that story.
No.
And wouldn't know why he's like he is. As a matter of fact, sometimes people make fun of him, wondering if what he says is truly authentic. And then when you hear that story, you understand that's his DNA.
He is one of the most intense people I've ever met. And he is on mission. And he says he wants to get to heaven exhausted.
Yeah. Oh.
And he's going to be, because I
want that T-shirt.
He said, when I get to heaven, I want to be exhausted, and not leave anything on the table.
Right.
Because everything we do is to get to one more child.
Yeah.
There was a little girl that they were impacted by that she's, I think, going to Bible college now. But as a little girl, she was taken out and rescued of horrific sexual trafficking, interfamiliar trafficking overseas. And she had written this poem. And it was like, help, help, monsters are chasing me. Where are you? Like, help me, help me, help me. And so one of our core values and one of our mantras, if you will, was, we do this because monsters are chasing her. And monsters are chasing our kids here in the U.S. and abroad. And I just say, if you hear this, do one thing. Yeah. Do something. Like, we're all called to protect children.
Well, I don't think of a better way to wind this conversation down. Paul put it this way: there are powers and principalities that we're fighting against. Yeah. And that there is an amount of courage. And I tell people all the time that, Tim's right. We want to be exhausted, but we also have to know it's a battle.
Yeah.
And that our symbol as Christians is not a smiley face, it's a cross.
Yeah.
And that requires sacrifice. And so I would just personally want to say thank you for taking time to share. Thank you for your faithfulness and sacrifice. And thanks for helping us become aware of this. I hope that maybe in about a year we can have you back and talk about more about the foundation.
Yeah.
But we want to invite people to go. What's the website that you can find out about the work?
So it's timtebowfoundation.org. And there's actually a guide in there for human trafficking, like on resource guide and all of that. That's actually on the website. So that'll be one of the things that I send you.
Great.
Yep.
Well, we thank y'all for listening, and we hope you'll explore some of this. But more than that, we hope you'll. I loved what Ashlee said. Do one thing.
Yeah.
And as always, hey, live loved.